The W650, totally unofficial history. At the end of the 20th century, the world of motorcycling had been taken over by alien forces. The 21st century announced itself as a period of technological monstrosities, mostly targeted at the yuppie market. The motorcycle was in path of becoming just a plastic toy for the rich and a plastic scooter for the poor. Materialism had won upon sheer passion, and bikers looked more and more like avatars of Japanese TV series cartoon characters. Real bikes had become a vague memory disappearing fast with the increase of Alzheimer's victims. All in all, a very gloomy sight really. Until one day, an angry, rebellious old-timer riding by the name of Captain Giles decided that nonsense and disrespect had been going far enough, and, using a two-strokes engine PC he had built for himself, he backfired his aftermarket designing software and decided to reconstruct the bike of his youth. At first, Captain Joyce, who was well aware of Yuppie's business practices, decided that it would be wise to build his bike only for the underground market of connoisseurs. Once achieved, his beautiful invention was only advertised on pirated radio and TV channels, but immediately called the attention of a small group of hardcore bikers who shared his common hatred for airbag protections and the opinion that the CB750 was still the best decent model ever produced since 1979. Some of these respectable survivors of the early biking 70s were still accompanied by creative bedmates from the hippie revolution era, who, by then, saw no point representing flowers any longer. Captain Joyce's creation imposed itself naturally as a new turn in their creative accomplishment. For example, here's Yoko Ono at work. The irreparable had been committed. Innocently, these disciples of Timothy Leary's had unwillingly unleashed the demons of the corrupted capitalist machine. Trendy, talentless artists immediately began copying the ideas of the inspired underground rebels. At first, their work remained mostly ignored by the great public at large. But then, encouraged by the critics and the media, more and more people came to visit the exhibitions, which prompted the critics and the media to encourage more people to visit the exhibitions, and so on. Soon, anyone with the slightest artistic pretension was talking about it. W, as their name did, was the latest cool in town. Imagine that, dear, it's you, and it doubles it. A double me, oh darling, this is so pre-clone age. Did they name it after Bush? More and more crowds rushed to the exhibitions, school bus loads, discount for students and elderlies. Captain Giles had become a pop art artist of his own. But since Captain Giles' creation was such a classic as well as a modern piece of art and technology, it also appeared in more secluded circles. Some of the more classic representations of his work were auctioned and moved to the highest ranks of our civilization, where crowned heads could revitalize their antique imperial memories. On the motorcycle front, the W had very quickly broken the boundaries of the underground market. Everyone in age of riding had an eye on Captain Giles' motorcycle. Masses of younger people were throwing away their dangerous and unreliable scooters, saving their pocket money for their future W. Every cat in town wanted one, even if only on his desktop. Being such a neat and beautiful object, the walls of the exhibition rooms soon exploded and the W began invading billboards. Captain Joyce was tastefully decorating our environment. On the roads, in our cities, in shopping malls and pedestrian streets, in financial districts and construction sites, even in hot districts, day and night, at home as overseas. Everywhere the W was a hit. Everywhere people loved it. It was shown in the shops, in the boutiques, outside outlets. Sometimes it would be there for no reason at all. It just was beautiful. everybody loved the W and wanted one for Christmas. It even acted in TV series, serving planet-saving riders. It appeared in several Hollywood flicks tailor-made for Captain Joyce's megastar machine. Popular actresses publicly displayed their attraction for it. Far less talented ones too, unfortunately. The W had become a fashionable item. Men loved women who loved the W. So the W made it to women magazines too. The W was sexy, an object of desire. Doctors recommended it for stress release. But all the fuss about Captain Joyce and his W soon began being quite a bit of a concern for many governments. People were deserting their job to go for a ride as soon as the sun was shining a bit. Lifelong spouses left their trusting husbands and children in crowds to hop at the back of the first W owner they could spot. At crossroads, policemen at the end of their careers would suddenly crack up and assault perfectly innocent W riders in order to steal their bike. Pirates in Somalia had caused a huge scandal by hijacking an important shipment of W sailing towards South Africa, and war was on everybody's lips. The delay of delivery became soon unbearable for most customers eager to receive their order at last, and many riots were starting worrying authorities in most nations. All sorts of vehicles, some of them still perfectly valid, were being willingly burned by their owners in front of W workshops. Soon, chiefs of governments organized emergency meetings to discuss and find radical solutions to these urgent problems. Most media warned the public of the possibility of a setup aimed at discrediting Captain Joyce's marvelous invention. The W was being singled out, indeed, and everybody knew why. Massive demonstrations all around the world were being organized to defend the W, resulting in more riots against the police. With their usual blend of hypocrisy and arrogance, most governments decided to sign up a treaty in favor of the creation of an international advisory committee charged of studying the possible dangers the W could irresponsibly spread in our societies. A task everyone reasonably expected to lead to catastrophic conclusions, so obvious and well-known was the perfection of Captain Joyce's motorcycle. The advisory committee soon let the world know of their conclusions. The W, according to their reports, was dangerous to our environment. Production had to cease immediately. The lists of orders would be deleted and deposits will be returned, but owners of existing W were allowed to ride them until they finished them up. The fare of most metropolitan transportations around the globe was momentarily and artificially decreased so as to render the prohibition of W more acceptable by the large frustrated public. The W-mania had come to its end, and that wonderful machine returned to the underground, its glorious fate sadly and unfairly shattered. Many, too weak to face such a scandalous abuse, took refuge in drugs and alcohol. Captain Joyce was never ever heard about again. The last traces history recorded of him were located in Southeast Asia. His fabulous W slowly became just a memory, sweet and sour at the same time, and an endless topic of discussions between eyes-wetting old-timers. However, it is said in old manuscripts that some of these hardcore riders have managed to preserve a few models of the legendary W. Some even mention the possible existence of a 2003 model that is said to have been all pimped up with superb brass custom parts, allegedly handmade in a darkish workshop in Hong Kong, mysteriously named E.T. Custom Motorcycles, and owned by a certain Joff, who would be none other than the son of Captain Joyce. My personal advice to you, dear hardcore surfer, is to browse through the files of this site looking for clues, as you might find yourself able to figure out the truth behind those wild rumors.